Hi there, it's Michaela from the Garden Club of Alexandria here to talk to you about panel design. Our club's inter-club schedule this month is a panel design inspired by porcelain. Here's the porcelain, and I'm going to read a little bit about it. It's a Japanese lobed Imari porcelain dish, glazed in the traditional bold cobalt and iron red glazes. This bowl features a prominent central reserve enclosing blossoms in a vase surrounded by geometric lattice and floral motifs, accented by stylized chrysanthemum and dragon motifs. So this gives us a beautiful color palette and a beautiful form that can be really inspiring to our design. One of the things I'm going to circle back to is that we don't want to be too literal in our design. We're looking at something that's going to be a creative design with the expectation that we're going to manage the plant material so there's not too much, and that the concept should be abstracted from the inspiration piece. So next I want to read to you and talk to you a little bit about panel design itself. So a panel design is a creative design which includes a panel or panels, plant material, and other components. As in all creative designs, there are few rules and no set patterns. Form and space play a major role. Here's the important point. The panels must be integrated within the design and can either be self-supporting or supported by the other components. A background does not constitute a panel. This creative design requires the use of little transitional material, and there is a strong contrast between colors. So as you can see, our schedule writer Jordan has picked a perfect piece for that because we see strong contrast between the colors on this plate. There's a wonderful form, and we're going to play with how we can creatively interpret that. Before we do, I wanted to show you what the pros do when they're inspired to create a panel design. This is a book that's from the National Garden Clubs, the Federated Clubs. It's called Designing by Type. And it's a wonderful book that shows a lot of creative designs. I've got several panel designs I can show you from this book. This one is more of an angular design, and it's using two placemats placed one behind the other. And you can see how the material is folded and integrated and manipulated to create a great rhythm. This one uses reeds as a panel background, and the reeds actually extend down in front of a long cylindrical vase with the plant material moving upwards. And this one uses a round placemat, and you can see the plant material wraps right around that placemat and extends up through it. The placemat is actually supported here by the container. And this last one, the panel is actually the container. You can see that the components are wired directly onto this basket that they've used upright as the container. So I wanted you to see that mainly so you can see that there are so many ways to use panels within your design and so many clever things that you may have on hand in your house that you can use. So I really challenged myself to use a minimum amount of plant material, and I just scoured my house for some of the more basic components that I could turn into something creative. Some things that you could use include a plate, a placemat, as you saw before, a cake round that you can buy at Michael's that has the little scalloped edge and it's flat. You put your cake on it when you're baking, or even a fan. And I think any of those would be really appropriate to that circular design we have for this Imari bowl. What I chose to do is I kind of put my Picasso hat on and tried not to interpret the schedule too literally. And that means I took some liberties with color and I took some liberties with form. And so here's where I ended up. I used a paper china plate. It's nice and heavy, doesn't really bend a lot. And I used a chopstick that I taped onto the back, and that's going to support my panel in my container. And then I thought about what I thought were the most important elements in this plate, and I felt like those triangular pinwheel shapes were really dominant. And I know that blue doesn't occur as much in floral material, so I decided to use the blue to contrast against more rust color floral materials. But I chose to make a brighter blue. So this is not the navy you see in the dish, but it's actually some paint that I had on hand. And so I took those triangle shapes and I abstracted them into my oval, and this is what I came up with. Now, I could have placed this a lot of different ways in my container. I could have placed it straight up oval, I could have placed it flat. What I decided to do to give it a little movement is place it a little bit off center. And all I did was I used packing tape to attach my chopstick to the back of the plate. This is not a design that you're required to view from all sides, so as long as your mechanics are hidden, you can use whatever you need to secure it. Some other pieces of my design are this planter. I love that it had this wonderful texture to it and sort of echoed the geometry of the design in the porcelain plate. It sits on a wooden base. It's all connected here. But I thought it gave it some nice height. And there's not too much space, because remember, this doesn't require a lot of plant material. So I'm actually going to only use a small portion of this, but it gives me room to layer in front and behind the panel, as well as something to put my plant materials in. Apologies to the conservationists, but I did use a small amount of Oasis. It was just going to be the easiest and quickest way to show you how to do this. But I do try to limit my use of Oasis as much as possible. All right, other things that I have. I already had the same blue paint that I used for my pinwheel. I had already painted these pieces of curly willow that I used in a Historic Garden Week arrangement. So I have several pieces of curly willow that are going to give my design a little bit of rhythm and movement. I have a bouquet that was Alstroemeria, one of the most simple and inexpensive flowers you can find anywhere, but they did really pick up on the color that I was looking for. The other thing I really liked about this selection is that they have rigid stems, so I'll be able to stand them upright in front of and behind my plate, and that'll help me integrate the design. So I just have 3 stems of Alstroemeria. I have these kind of interesting tropical plant leaves that I clipped off of one of my house plants. You could buy yourself a small plant at Lowe's or Home Depot and use it for cuttings. And then lastly, I have some reindeer moss that I'm going to use to cover up my mechanics when I'm done. So putting it all together is as simple as this. I'm going to place my panel first. And you do have to be a little careful when you're placing this, because you don't want your panel to end up pointing down. So since this panel has a lip, I'm actually gonna put it about in the middle of my container, but I'm gonna angle it just the tiniest bit backwards, just so it's not picking up a lot of reflection. And I'm gonna push it down. I didn't push it quite all the way, just so that I have a little bit of play if I want to add or subtract from that. All right, then I'm going to take, I've got 3 pre-cut pieces of Alstroemeria. It's kind of like Mama Bear, Papa Bear, Mama Bear, and Baby Bear, 3 different sizes. The first one I'm going to put behind my plate. Here's where I'm integrating. I'm going to put it slightly off center and let it peek over the top. And it's actually leaning right into that plate. I'm going to push my plate a little bit more, position that so I get a little, there we go. All right, and then the second piece I'm going to put in front of the plate. And I'm kind of using this, the point where the triangles come together is the place where that's going to kind of frame my design. So I'm going to put it in front and push it down. So it's just kind of filling that white space above the point. And the third one, I'm going to tuck in the bottom, kind of angling out a little bit over the edge. All right, so you can see I've created a little bit of a rhythm. What I might do is, to give it a little more direction, is kind of angle this top one a little bit more. So you can see I'm sort of creating a triangular line that adheres to the rhythm and the line of my panel. And then I'm going to add my leaves. You'll have a much easier time doing this because you won't be doing it backwards. These leaves are great because they actually have red on the back, green on the front. But I want to be able to see them, so don't be shy letting them peek over your panel there. And then the second one, put there. All right. And then I need a little bit of transitional material, right? It's not quite connecting together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my curly willow and I am going to add it in a couple of places. This one that has kind of the most movement, I'm going to use in the front. And I'm going to make sure I'm kind of, no problem for it to touch the panel. You see how already that's connecting, it sort of straddles that triangle and brings your eye up. And then I'm also going to add a little bit in the back. To frame my plant material. All right, it's as simple as that. This is all I'm going to use. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to fill it with some reindeer moss to cover my mechanics. Simple as can be. Gives it a little pop of green. All right, Panel Design 101. Enjoy, and I look forward to seeing what you create.